What up, humanities? Welcome back to class. All right, I was looking to kind of shake things up a little bit, and honestly, for a while, I've been meaning to uh, try to tie in like music into class too, because of course, a big part of being a human, which I want this class to be something that kind of you can relate to and take with you in all walks of life, and just learn more about being a human, the world today. So I've been meaning to tie in more music. Anyway, today I think I've got a lesson for you that'll hit it on the head and fit in with our current unit and provoke some critical thinking, and hopefully it'll just also be kind of overall interesting and engaging for you. So hopefully you're aware we're in a unit that is human trafficking, prostitution, and modern day slavery. Three totally separate things, yet they also all can kind of overlap and intertwine with each other. Now, last week we had hit human trafficking with the movie Taken and did some discussion around that. Of course, that one also ties into kind of like a forced prostitution. This week, I want to get more into just that kind of middle issue of prostitution that we hit. But I'm not looking to get into all the nitty gritty and I don't know. It's kind of a touchy subject probably to hit in a high school class, but I also think it really has a lot of interesting ethical, policy, and kind of moral issues that tie in with it. So my intro, before we get too heavy into it and really start talking about policy and outcomes and ethics of it, I wanted to tie in this Reba McEntire song that I've heard for many years, but I guess I never really listened to it that close until more recently. So maybe, do any of you have any songs that you've heard 1,000 times, but you never really listened to the lyrics? Well, this song, it's called Fancy, is definitely, it fits that bill for me. Now, many of you probably know that I have a pretty eclectic taste in music. Any of you that have been in my class for face-to-face learning before, you can testify that, I play a lot of different stuff. I have quite a variety on my master playlist where you'll be listening to Biggie Smalls for a minute, and then next thing you know, you got Alan Jackson on, and then you got some Johnny Horton, and then the Beatles. So I listen to a little bit of everything, but if you rewind the clock back to, maybe 20 some years ago to 30 years ago, I hated country music growing up. However, there was always a handful of country songs that kind of made the Toluki approved list. Fancy was one of those songs that I've heard a lot of times. I think, man, I had heard of my parents playing it way back years ago when I was young, and I always just kind of liked the jam. However, I never ever listened to the music that close. I always thought that this song was about some fancy girl that liked to dance or something. And it's kind of, upbeat, fun song. Well, about a year ago, I actually stopped and the song came on the radio and I listened to the lyrics very close. And I was like, oh my God, this is a very dark song that, deals with some really heavy issues. It was mind blowing to me because I had never really listened to it that close. Now, there's been a dozen songs like that in my life where I, like the tune, but never really listened to the lyrics till far later. This one was probably the most shocking to me when I actually sat down and listened to it. And then I had to re-listen to it a couple times to really analyze it closely. Now, I'm imagining most of you, well, here's the thing. I want to give you a quick overview of the song and kind of explain why I tied it in. Then I want you to pause here or you'll leave this video and you're going to go watch the music video. Now, I have the official music video attached to this, and then I also have a version where it just gives you the lyrics. You can listen to either or both, whatever you want to do, but I would appreciate it if you actually listen to the song after I go through and give you kind of the overview. And then last up, today I'm doing a Q&A post, and I want you to kind of analyze my essential question here and answer that for me as best you can with a really thoughtful several sentence response where you're going to kind of display your critical thinking. Okay, so the song Fancy, it's basically set like a family, I should say a single mom with her daughters in a very hard-pressed situation. Fancy is the name of the protagonist, I guess, in the song. She's the featured character. If you watch the actual official music video, Reba McEntire, who is the singer, this song, she plays Fancy in like the music video version. Now, Fancy is kind of a young adult. I believe in the song it says it's like the summer she was turning 18. So she's probably 17 at the time of the song, but young adult, roughly about the age most of you are. In the song, you hear about like the mom is super hard pressed. They're obviously very poor. They're way below the poverty line, struggling to make ends meet. And there is a younger sibling that's a baby. And like in the song, it says they're struggling to pay their rent and their food, and the baby potentially is going to starve. Now, in the music video, if you watch it, which I hadn't watched this until yesterday for the first time ever, I've only ever heard the song. The image I always had of the mother in the song was probably was maybe a good looking lady at some point, but has been beat down by life and is haggard and has stress and just like, you know what I mean? Just kind of that is the visual, the image that I always had in my head. I think in the music video, that kind of lines up with that too. So basically the song it ends up evolving into and being about prostitution, where it's like, if the only way they can get some money coming in would be by selling their bodies, selling sexual services, all right? Kind of a dark thing. And in the mother, I think she, at least what I glean from the song is she would be willing to do it, but if the clients don't want to have her, if they're not attracted to her, well, that's kind of a no-go. They're not going to pay. So then she basically kind of insists that Fancy, the older daughter, she's going to have to go do it for the family to make ends meet. So like that's kind of the chorus of the song. Here's your one chance, Fancy. Don't let me down. Kind of dark and heavy, you know what I mean? Pushing your own daughter, your own blood into an act like that. Man, I don't know. I have kids. I don't have daughters, but that just seems like, man, you'd have to be in a really dark, desperate place to force that on one of your children. You also, like when I listen to the song, I don't gather that like the mother takes any pleasure in this, that this is actually heartbreaking for her. And it's not that she wants to do it, but the song makes you think that it's their only chance at survival, essentially, is by Fancy sucking it up, taking one for the team, and providing for the family. Now, that definitely would qualify the character in the song Fancy for like victim status. I think definitely anybody that is forced into prostitution at a young age is for sure a victim and rightfully can claim that. But that's not the whole song or where it ends there. It could kind of leave you off there that, man, and you just think desperation and misery, and it's all going to be bad outcomes and a terrible end for all of them. There's a lot of songs that are like that too. But in this one, the song kind of turns like Fancy basically is nice to the gentleman. She's able to provide. But then soon after this event, that's like the last time she sees her mom, child services comes in, probably rightfully so in this situation, and take the baby. Fancy never sees her little sister again. Mom dies shortly after that. You get the impression maybe like in a hospital or an asylum or something like that. And then Fancy, because of her age, she's turning 18, she's not going to get much help or support from the state, likely. So she's an adult, so she just kind of gets turned loose on her own. And then you see she was blaming her mom for this whole situation, but then she starts to understand and see her mom's perspective once she's out on her own and has to kind of fend for herself. Now, again, pretty dark spot right there. But that's not where the song ends. One of my favorite parts of the song is actually the last part, the finish up. She basically explains that she gets into a life of prostitution. She embraces it. And it's not all negative and downer from there. She ends up being quite successful. And one of the lyrics in the song is, for basically on 15 years now, she hasn't had to worry about anything. And now she has a Georgia mansion. She also rattles off her like clientele list, and there's some pretty, without naming actual names, there's some pretty impressive people on there, like a king, a congressman. I forget. She rattles it all off. Pay close attention to that part when you get in, but you get the idea by the end of it that, man, she's done pretty good for herself. If you measure it monetarily or just like kind of financially, sounds like she's worth a fair amount of money now and is definitely able to support herself. I also like, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I don't get the vibe that like she is hating her job and miserable every second and only doing it for the money. You kind of get the impression that she knocks on other people that are self-righteous hypocrites that have been calling her bad and calling her evil and basically saying that I embrace this lifestyle, and she's kind of successful and happy with it. So I think that'll lead us into some of like the ethical questions about prostitution that we'll be getting into in the near future. But what I want you to answer today, now I've kind of taken the roundabout way and maybe babble a little too much, but I've given you the overarching narrative of the song. After you stop this video, I do want you to at least listen to the music video one time. So play the song, listen to the lyrics the whole way through, and then here is the essential question that I will sum up again in the notes. But this is what I want you to answer for me. Let me click on here. Okay. How would you describe Fancy? And I'm saying, like, first and foremost, how would you describe her? Because I think in reality, just like all human situations, there's a lot of gray zone, a lot of nuance. On the one hand, Fancy is absolutely would qualify as a victim. On the other hand, man, according to her telling of her story, she's a success story too. Financially, sounds like she's happy, like she's doing well for herself. So if you had to pick one of those two descriptors and couldn't use both, you're not creating a real nuanced narrative about her, which one would you pick and why? So is she a victim first, or is she a success story first? Which of those would you describe her or use to describe her first and foremost? That's like the top, kind of the top one in your head. Now, like I just said, in reality, I think you could make a great argument for both. So answers are totally subjective. There is no right or wrong answer to this question. It's just, how do you view it? And honestly, your answer here might tell a little bit more about your psychology than it does about like just Fancy story, if that makes any sense. So is she a victim, or is she a success story? One of those two, and then what I'm looking for you is not just that's how I want you to open your answer. Like, you'll say one or the other, so don't be a fence setter. I want you to pick one or the other, and then I'm looking for just a couple sentences kind of backing that up, showing me that you thought about it, and kind of back up and justify your answer as best you can. If you have any questions about it, hit me up, let me know. But I hope you enjoyed the song. I hope it all made sense to you, and I hope this is kind of a good lead off for this really kind of controversial and I don't know, ethically all over the place topic that we're embarking on this week. See ya.